Nearly 2 decades later, one of daytime television's most explosive on-air clashes is making headlines again. Elisabeth Hasselbeck has broken down in tears after Rosie O'Donnell revisited their infamous argument from The View, the heated 2007 showdown that divided fans, stunned audiences, and marked one of the most dramatic moments in talk show history. It all began when Rosie appeared on an Australian radio show, Ricky Lee, Tim, and Joel, and made a bold claim that the now legendary confrontation between her and Elisabeth wasn't spontaneous at all, but carefully orchestrated behind the scenes. Rosie told the hosts that the split-screen moment, now iconic in TV history, was planned by producers. "Of course not," she said when asked if Elisabeth knew what was coming. "I looked up and saw the split screen, and I thought, our producer isn't the kind of guy to do that on the fly. That was prepared. The whole thing, I think, was a setup." Her statement immediately reignited the long-simmering tension between the two former co-hosts, and this time, Elisabeth wasn't holding back. Within days, Hasselbeck took to Instagram, visibly emotional and fighting tears as she addressed Rosie's claims directly. "My heart is like, just please stop," she said, her voice trembling. "We're all just trying our best. Stop lying. Stop. The 47-year-old former View co-host called Rosie's story manipulative and urged her to stop revising history. "When you have to go back and twist something that happened almost 20 years ago, it hurts," she said. "I've moved on. I forgave a long time ago. But please, just stop the madness. Stop the lying, and just be free." It's a powerful statement from a woman who once shared one of the most talked-about stages on television with O'Donnell, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Barbara Walters. To understand why this moment hit so hard, we have to rewind to May 23, 2007, the day the View audience witnessed one of the most tense exchanges in the show's history. At the time, Rosie O'Donnell and Elisabeth Hasselbeck sat on opposite ends of the political spectrum. Rosie, outspoken and liberal, had been a strong critic of the Iraq War and the Bush administration, while Elisabeth, then 29, was one of television's most visible conservative voices. During that fateful episode, the topic turned to comments Rosie had made about U.S. troops, and what followed was an intense, unscripted confrontation broadcast live to millions. "You said nothing," Rosie snapped at Elisabeth, "and that's cowardly." Elisabeth, visibly offended, shot back, "No. I defended you." Viewers watched as the tension escalated in real time, split screens capturing both women's emotional faces as they argued back and forth about patriotism, war, and loyalty. The exchange became an instant pop culture moment. It was raw, uncomfortable, and unforgettable. Shortly after that episode aired, Rosie left The View, ending her 8-month stint on the show. At the time, both women publicly insisted there were no hard feelings. "I'm not mad at Rosie at all," Elisabeth said during a post-show interview. "We're two grown women who will work toward resolution on some issues." But now, almost 2 decades later, Rosie's new comments have reopened old wounds. Elisabeth, who has largely stayed out of the spotlight since leaving daytime television, said she was heartbroken to hear Rosie imply the fight was staged. "That moment was real," she said in her Instagram message. "It was painful, it was emotional, and it was unscripted. To say it was planned feels like rewriting history, and that's not fair to anyone who lived it." Through tears, she added, "I really hope that you can be released from whatever this is that's causing you to cause such harm. Even if you don't stop, I still forgive you." Rosie has not yet publicly responded to Elisabeth's emotional plea, but her remarks on the Australian radio show suggested she still views that day as one of the defining moments of her time on The View. "The split screen? That wasn't a coincidence," Rosie insisted. "That was ready to go. I didn't know it was coming, and it made everything 10 times worse." For longtime fans of The View, this fight was more than just a TV argument. It was a cultural flashpoint that reflected the deep political and emotional divides in America at the time. The segment was replayed on news networks for days, analyzed on talk shows, and written about in nearly every major entertainment outlet. It even earned The View some of its highest ratings of the decade. But behind the headlines, both women later admitted the experience left emotional scars. In her memoir, A Place of Yes, Rosie revealed that she was deeply hurt by how the situation unfolded and said she felt betrayed by how quickly things spiraled on live television. Elisabeth, meanwhile, opened up in later interviews about how difficult it was to navigate the public scrutiny that followed. "It was a lot," she said years later. "There were days I went home and cried because I felt misunderstood, but I always tried to be authentic." At the height of The View's popularity, their feud became symbolic of the show itself: fiery, unpredictable, and never afraid to confront uncomfortable truths. Barbara Walters, who moderated during that era, once described the Rosie-Elisabeth clash as the moment that defined the show's ability to reflect real America: messy, passionate, and divided. In recent years, however, both women seemed to have moved on. Rosie has focused on her acting career, advocacy work, and her family, while Elisabeth has embraced life outside of television, authoring faith-based books and occasionally returning to The View as a guest co-host, which is why this new emotional outburst caught so many fans off guard. "It's sad to see it." Resurface, one longtime viewer, commented online. "They've both grown so much since then." Others, however, saw Elisabeth's emotional response as a reflection of how personal that moment still feels, even after all these years. "She's clearly still hurt," another fan wrote. "It's not about politics anymore. It's about truth and respect." And that's exactly what Elisabeth emphasized in her message. "I'm not angry," she said softly. "I'm just asking for honesty. We lived that moment. Millions of people saw it happen. There's no need to change what it was." Her message concluded with grace rather than resentment. "We're both passionate women," she said. "We care deeply about what we believe in. That's why it got emotional. But I still wish her peace." It's a sentiment that echoes what Elisabeth said back in 2007, just days after the fight aired. "We both care," she told reporters at the time. "That's why we get emotional. But we're also people who like to work toward resolution. Whether that resolution will happen this time remains to be seen." For now, the resurfaced feud is sparking nostalgia and debate among fans who remember The View's most explosive era. Some are revisiting old clips, watching in disbelief at the tension that once defined daytime television, while others see it as a reminder of how much has changed in media and culture over the years. But for Elisabeth Hasselbeck, one thing is clear: she's ready to leave the past in the past, if only everyone else will let her. In her emotional closing words to Rosie, she said, "It can just be so much more freeing. Rosie, if you can just stop. Stop the madness. Stop the lying. Just be free." It was a heartfelt plea that struck a chord with many, a reminder that even after all this time, forgiveness doesn't always erase the pain, but it does open the door for peace. And perhaps that's the real story behind this decades-old feud. Not anger or blame, but two strong, passionate women still trying to make peace with one of television's most unforgettable moments.